Did you see how Shreya did? Right. The GHCI, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Awesome. For this crowd, good. Thank you so much for coming in. I know the plenary was all brilliant. We had a fantastic dance fitness session. The anthem is just truly mind-blowing. So before we start, just like a 30-second. Just stand up, everyone. Thank you. Just stretch yourself because this day is going to be fantabulous. You have a long day ahead of fantastic conversations, wonderful tracks, and especially this track is going to be amazing. So stretch yourself. Hand side, hand up, hand at side, hand down. Thank you so much. Sit down. All right. So welcome to the Tech for Social Good track with Grace Hopper Celebration India 2024. It's truly great to be back. My name is Ranjana. I globally lead the diversity, equity, inclusion for a company called Nagaro, which is a product engineering company based out of the German Stock Exchange and has a huge presence across the globe. And it's fantastic to be back. This track is all about harnessing the power of technology to create a positive and lasting impact on society. Today, we will dive into topics ranging from groundbreaking use cases in AI to the nuances of sustainable software development, with insights from some of the brilliant minds in tech and social impact space, right? A huge shout out to the track chairs, Mamta Venkatesh and Majira Sinha, for all the effort in bringing this content together. Do we have Mamta and Majira out here? Do we have them? Oh, not yet? Okay, we'll give the shout out a little later when they walk in, but a huge round of applause to Mamta and Majira. All right, let's get started. But before I move on, I would like to give a huge shout out to Shivani from ABI, who has been integral to bring this track also together. Thank you, Shivani. All right, let's get started and explore how tech can truly be the force for good. Our first session. To kick things off, let's hear from Induvadi Tyagarajan. Indu, where are you? Awesome. Come onto the stage. Induvadi Tyagarajan is the principal engineer for Wells Fargo, and as she introduced us to the fascinating world of digital twins and how this revolutionary technology is shaping the future of farming. Indu, we're really keen to hear from you, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Check, check. Hey all. Be productive in the Bangalore traffic, huh? All right, I'm Indu, Principal Engineer at Wells Fargo. So something about me. Since when I started my career writing a line of code, I didn't think that I would be actually working on a technology that is going to predict the future, right? And I still have the same level of excitement. And when I even solved the very minutest of problems, since when I solved the Hello World program, I'm just continuing the excitement. Okay, so let's get into the interesting part. Why this topic? I'm sure everybody would go to markets, buy veggies, buy pulses. How many of us know what is the price of a tur dal? 1 kg of tur dal. 1 kg of onion? No hands? Okay, good. Is it cheaper? I guess no, right? It is pretty costly. And the prices are not getting any cheaper at all. And let's not forget about the pesticides that we are consuming along with it. It is very, very scary, right? And can we blame the farmers for all this? We cannot. Because the farmers are focusing only on the yield. And if they don't get the yield, everything is at stake for them, right? Literally everything, their livelihood, their families, everything is at stake. So we will have to do something about it for sure. And how do we do it? And think about this, even the smartphones in our hands have more computing power than that is required for a farmer to make their critical decisions. And are we happy with it? We are using cutting edge technologies day by day. Our smartphones have AI at edge, and we are playing with technologies day in and day out. And what are we doing with it? So isn't this the high time? So let's see how we are planning to address it. So these are the different factors that are currently affecting agriculture. So here we see a lot of, so you can imagine this as security threads, right? Whenever we create an application, we develop an application, we do have a lot of security threads, and we jump into it and we'll try to attack it. And similar is the case here, where we will definitely have to address all these factors, which is definitely influencing agriculture. And finally, food security. Because of all these threats, food security is definitely at stake. So we will have to address all these security threats for agriculture. And these are some interesting numbers. Look at the number of pests and diseases. Because of the increasing number of pests and diseases, the loss that is happening, the percentage of loss is getting increased day by day. And the pests are actually, they are mutating. And we are not able to address it with the existing pesticides. Considering the yield, the irrigation water, a lot of underground water is being depleted. And for every 10 buckets of water, 6 buckets are getting wasted. That is alarming. And even if there is a 1% increase in climate or temperature, 6% is going to get lost in wheat yield. And that is like millions of tons of grains that is going to miss our tables. So we will definitely have to use technology to address it. But all these factors are definitely predictable and preventable. We just need the right tools to use them and attack them. And digital replica, that is digital twinning, is one such interesting technology where we'll try to use a technology and address agriculture, address all the security threats that we did see, and we will try to address all of them using digital twinning technology. So let me ask you this question. How many of you read about ISRO creating an analog simulation of Mars and Moon in Ladakh? Good. So that is exactly what we are trying to do here. That is called digital twinning. It is nothing but creating a replica of your physical system in the virtual system. So it is not just a static system, right? It is going to be a living and breathing system where you have all the data that is getting synced up at real time. So it is definitely going to be a living system, and that is a digital replica of the physical system. So we have all these different entities that we will be using in the digital system. We will start with simulation and do a prediction, come up with definite outcomes, and prescribe based on the outcomes. You prescribe what is the requirement for the respective use case, and we will automate the whole system and monitor it. But we don't stop with monitoring. We'll also act upon the events that are getting triggered based on the monitoring. So what are the events that will get triggered? Any anomalies, any interesting events, right? So all of these will form a digital system, which is a replica of the physical system. So how do we use digital twinning in agriculture? So these are the different entities that we will try to digital twin. Okay, so here crop modeling and simulation. So what do we do with crop modeling and simulation is, we can monitor, we can actually create a replica of the crops. It need not be a single crop. It could be fields of crops, acres of lands. And we will create a crop modeling. For example, we can monitor the health, we can monitor the growth, and we can even simulate the photosynthesis and measure the leaf surface area. And we can measure what is the stem and root growth. So all of these can be simulated, predicted, and the entities that we saw earlier, all of that factors could be applied here. And same is the case with soil health analysis. How do we do with soil health analysis? Say we do have different categories for the soil: pH balance, salinity, nutrients, the NPK, right? The potassium, sodium, phosphorus, all of that we can monitor, and even soil temperature and soil moisture can be monitored, simulated, and we can act accordingly. Weather forecasting and climate modeling, we've seen this in a lot of places. It is overly used. So let's jump on to the next one. pest and disease management. So in pest and disease management, not all the pests affect all the crops. There are different pests, different pest varieties that are going to affect distinct crops, right? And there could be seasons. In particular seasons, that pest variety would be prevalent. So such prediction and such prevention is what we will do with simulation and prediction. So all of these entities will integrate together and form an yield prediction and optimization twin. So that is called a super twin. So you can think that yield prediction and optimization is a super twin because it is the integration of all these entities. It is not just, we are not going to get the yield just like that, right? We have to work on all these twinning, and finally the result of all these twinning is the yield prediction and optimization. So let's look at a particular use case. For example, soil health. So soil health is one of the entities which we saw, and we will try to create an intelligent soil, cognitive soil. So how do we do it? So we will have to start with data collection. So how do we collect the data? So the data will be collected from different sources. It could be static data, it could be dynamic data, it could be real-time data. So all of those data will be collected. And what are those data? They are all satellite data, say SAR data from Sentinel-2. All those images will be captured, and we will have remote sensing data from drones, for example. So we will collect those data. And we could have the IoT sensors that are actually buried in the soil at 3 different levels: lower level, medium level, and upper level. And we will collect real-time data from those sensors, and those sensors can capture real-time moisture, temperature, nutrients, etc. And they will emit all those metrics, emit all those data. So now that we've received all this data, so how do we organize it? How do we process data? So first we'll have to organize the data. How do we organize it? First, we think of this, right? You have a large chessboard and you lay the chessboard on a particular field. So that is called gridification. So this gridification of data is what we have to start with. And once you have gridified the field or gridified the land, then you apply layers of data on top of it. Say you start with the basic Sentinel-2 images from satellite, and then you layer it up with the real-time data from IoT sensors. Then you layer it up with soil moisture. So you can imagine this as an N by M matrix, and then you can process the data based on this matrix, right? And you will definitely use different AML models. For example, say soil classification. So for which soil, which crop variety would be fitting more? So we might use random forest, and we will analyze this and make sure that this crop variety is being sowed on a particular soil type. So this classification can use random forest. And for another example could be, say gradient boost. Gradient boost could be used for detecting the soil nutrients and making sure that we are not depleting the nutrients down the line. So what nutrient is getting depleted and what kind of fertilizer we should be applying to the soil so that it gets balanced. It gets a balance and the crop will be giving a better yield, right? So such AML model prediction we will be doing, and all of these will give us a very rich type of data, very rich data. And this data will be monitored in a very intuitive dashboard, and we can monitor it. While we are monitoring, as I said earlier, we'll not just stop with monitoring. We will also act upon it, right? So these are going to emit interesting events, and these events are fed back to the actuator which is sitting in the field. So these actuator are going to absorb those events and act on it. I'll give you use case. For example, the northeast corner of the land, say grid number A12, is not having enough moisture. So that is the outcome that we are getting from all this processing. So that feedback will be given to the actuator, and the actuator could act upon it by triggering the drip irrigation only for that pocket of land, because the rest of the land is all fine. Only that pocket of land is missing a bit of moisture, and we will not overdo it also. We will find the right level, optimum level, and stop there. So this is how we create an intelligent soil, and this is just one of the entities. We have similar use cases for all such entities which we saw earlier. So this is some statistics after. So even though this is like in early outcome, it is pretty impressive, right? We can see that there is a lot of increase in yield, lot of increasing farmer income. I'll give you a sample of how farmer income could be increased. All this data, the banking institutions can use it and prepare a credit score. And that credit score could reflect their percentage of yield based on all these entities like soil health, the pests, the amount of pesticides that were used, how clean the yield is or how clean the grains are. So accordingly, the credit score will be prepared, and that credit score could be used by the financial institutions to give them a loan, isn't it? So it is very easy. So that is exactly how we use technology. And absolutely, we can definitely, the same use case that we saw now, we can reduce a lot of water, right? Because we don't need abundant amount of water when there is only a less amount of water that is required only for a pocket of land. So we can avoid that. So if at all you want to try, please scan this, and this has a public data set, and you can get your hands dirty, and you can start there, and you can use your own models, predict it, and come up with the predictive score, and you can try out different models, right? And based on the different types like soil classification, pest analysis, all of that. Thank you. And let's think this, right? Whatever we do currently, it is not enough. And while we are enjoying minting bitcoins, we should also focus on what are we doing to solve the planet level problems in the firefighting mode, isn't it? Thank you.
How inspiring was that? I mean, this is literally a farmer's time machine, right? Like, you're literally, like, going right into the future. But of course, the reach is the question mark out here. And I hope you do fantastic work around it. And congratulations on the cases and etc. But thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I would like to invite the session chair, Maya Chakrapani, to come up on stage and present a token of our appreciation to our speaker.
Get that. We're about to break that chain of thought that forcing you can't do that. Tied us down, now we combat. New gen in the face, we about that. Me plus we.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Indu. Any questions, since we're having lightning talks? Any questions? So we will take it offline. You can connect with Indu just after the session.
I'll be sitting out there.
Yeah, yeah. So while the break is on, we can connect with Indu. Thank you so much, Indu. Thank you so much. All right. So we move on to our next talk. Next, let's welcome Priyanka Sebastian. Priyanka? Yeah, all right. Priyanka Sebastian is a doctoral researcher for University of Oulu as she takes us on a journey from imagination to reality, exploring how technology is reshaping classrooms in a global context. Very interesting topic. We are eager to hear from you. So Priyanka, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Ranjana, for this introduction. I just want to begin with saying that this is my first GHCI, and just yesterday the vibe was so electrifying, and I'm so happy my cup is overflowing, and I'm happy to see the turnout here. My name is Priyanka, and I'm a doctoral researcher, second-year doctoral researcher at the University of Oulu in Finland. How many of you have heard this name, Oulu? Okay, now there's one. Okay, so it's a city in northern Finland, about an hour by flight from Helsinki. And I operate in the space of human and child computer interaction. And my research specifically delves with speculative research and how emerging technologies, and more specifically, social robots, virtual reality, and generative AI are going to shape classrooms of the future. So I work very, very closely with teachers and children. It's a cross-collaborated study between Finland and in India. So I work closely with teachers as well as students, 7th graders, to understand and tap into their imaginings, their hopes, fears, aspirations, for how they imagine future classrooms. But before I begin, thanks Indu for this wonderful talk, and we are transitioning now from agriculture and industry to academia and education. So I use participatory design methods. Participatory design is a collaborative approach to design where the end users of a product or a system actively participate in the decision making and the design making process. It can be applied across fields to right from industry to a very corporate environment to education to classrooms. So I work, this picture that you see is a workshop with Indian public school teachers in Delhi. And we tap into their hopes and imaginations of future classrooms and what they think and what they imagine classrooms of the future to be like. And I'm talking about the future. So think what your great grandchildren's classrooms would look like. Would they even be in brick and mortar spaces? So those kind of things. This is another, so I've run this workshop with Finnish 7th graders. I've run this workshop with Indian 7th graders, and my last data set is with Finnish high school teachers. So it's been a very interesting study. And one of my papers was recently published at the Participatory Design Conference, and the other two are in review. And just a second. So since my study is a cross-collaborative study, the point of it is not to compare global south or the Indian context to the Scandinavian context. So participatory design is predominantly, it's a product of Scandinavia, how it was born there in the 70s. But the point of the study is not to compare the global south to the global north, because we know we have our own set of challenges and that would defeat the purpose. But the point is rather, how can the global south and the global north inspire each other? Because I mean, let's face it, we are doing something right here in India. The CEOs of the top 5 are of Indian origin, so we've got something that we are getting right. So in this context, a little recap on the existing work in academia in the human and child computer interaction space. So we know for now that there is a need to address computational empowerment in children's education. So the teachers display this sort of sensitivity that children need to be empowered computationally right from the syllabus itself. This is the sentiment raised by Indian high school teachers, and there's also literature supporting this. We also know that children must be educated from the data available about teachers, and also from my interaction with public school teachers. They express that children need to be educated about technologies and also be taught how to critically reflect on the outcome of these technologies so that they can decide, like they have the agency to decide what's right and what's wrong for themselves. And the teachers feel at least that it needs to start quite young, because the children today are bombarded with media and they're growing up with technology, and every generation of today, there used to be a time when a 10-year age gap was considered, like people who had 10 years age gap amongst siblings, for example, found it a little bit hard to relate to each other. But the gap is shrinking. There are people that now, people in the education space know that even in like grade 5 and grade 7, the gap feels much wider, because there is the children growing up equipped fully with digital media at their disposal. There's also studies supporting that how generative AI is finding its place in classrooms, but how teachers can leverage this to sort of ease their workload, and how children can use it to accomplish their own assignments, their tasks. So seeing generative AI not as this hairy, scary monster, but also a tool to sort of aid and ease your workload, both for students as well as for teachers. And there's also a significant number of research supporting how VR can be used for autistic children. But there's limited work still on how VR can be used as an aid for teaching. So in my workshops, children share these very, very interesting insights on how they would like to visit their history lesson through VR, which is very creative. Who thought of that? How maths would be much simpler if the numbers floated around them in VR, and how they could go and see the volcano in Indonesia in a geography lesson. So that could be an interesting method of VR, and they also felt that it would help them retain things better because it's visual. Um, if there's one thing I want you guys to leave my lightning talk with is just this one question, that think of what could be the implications of unequal access to emerging technologies in education. So think of the urban and rural divide, think of the global south and the global north divide. So the picture on the top is an IB school in India. The picture in the south, the picture in the bottom is a Scandinavian classroom, okay? A typical Scandinavian classroom. The picture on the top is, IB schools are not typical, so it's one of the top tier classroom environment. So we all know what regular classrooms look like: super overcrowded. There's one computer lab, probably, which probably some computers don't work, you know? So I've identified a research gap, that there is limited research in the child-computer interaction space using participatory design approaches, which highlight the children's education needs, but from the perspective of teachers. So there is literature about learning from the perspective of children, not significant, but there is. But there is still a rarity in research for children's needs in education, but from teachers' perspectives. And teachers in India, but I have discovered that it seems to be a global thing. In India, it's of course a lot more, that teachers are overburdened with administrative tasks in addition to teaching and lesson planning. And there's another layer of challenge for Indian teachers, is that so we are very, very quick to give a digital push, a fab lab or a digital thing or whatever, but teachers are treated as the mere executor of this top-down directive. So by working with teachers, we discovered that oftentimes they don't even receive the adequate training. So it's another added burden to an already overburdened teacher. Now add to that factors of age. So it makes things a lot more challenging. But more importantly, as I mentioned, participatory design is a Scandinavian thing. It can be, while it's applied to several fields, there needs to be a cultural sensitivity as participatory design approaches travel from the global north to the global south. Because, for example, Asian societies, Indian, Southeast Asian, the entire subcontinent, we are high context societies. So we operate with layers of hierarchy, class, caste, diversity, regional. So there are so many layers. So these are called high context society, as opposed to Western societies, which are low context, which means that things are pretty much standardized. So if you get meat and potato mash in Germany, it's also consumed in UK, it's also consumed in France, so in Asia, every region, and I'm not speaking country, every province has its own very, very specific cuisine. So this is just one part. So this is just to explain what high context and low context mean, right? So for example, in the context of teachers in India, sensitivity to cultural nuances would mean that understanding that students cannot speak super freely with their teachers the way children in Western society speak to their teachers. They don't even call their teachers ma'am, for example, right? So this level of sensitivity is required as we apply certain approaches to streamline system, to bring about change. So as I mentioned that by applying participatory design approaches in communities in global South, requires a nuanced understanding of the social context. So other factors are understanding social distance, understanding the order, social order. Yeah, so my study so far has led me to find that the role of the teacher is going to be required to be changed. So teachers and also students, it's surprising, the common thread is that teachers and students both see this happening in the near future. That the teacher is not just an instructor anymore. A teacher is a facilitator. A teacher is seen as a guide. A teacher in the future is seen as a co-discoverer who's on the journey, on the learning journey along with the children. Because the children have started to imagine, the teachers also imagine, the presence of, say, robots in the classroom, the presence of generative AI for studying. So that will necessitate that the role of the teacher itself changes. The teacher is no longer required to have all the answers. The teacher is now in a space of facilitating things, right? How to use this tool, for example, a Gen AI. At the same time, the teachers also sort of grapple with, for example, a lack of support. There's also a lack of peer support among teachers. And there seems to be an inability to also envision humanistic perspectives combined in education. So for example, things that are more sensitivity driven, things that are more in the space of understanding the workload issues. And also, teaching more or less even internationally is a feminine profession. And I want to conclude by saying that as emerging technologies like Gen AI, social robots, virtual reality, and now there's a new wave of 6G, we stand at a very, very critical juncture in history where we see education transform globally, right? And we are in the space to foster cross-border collaborations. So, thank you.
Such a relevant topic, right? And how long was this research? 2 years, right? Oh, okay. All the best for that. But the kind, like, I'm a mom, I have a 4-year-old, and the kind of teaching has also changed so much, right? Like, I think all of us, most of the mothers here, can relate to, like, we used to have like 4 lines, and we used to learn our alphabets with that 4 lines, the cursive writing and etc. If the teacher says write L, you just write L, right? Here my son, who's 4-year-old, explains to me, Mama, there's a standing line and then there is a sleeping line. And I'm like, what is the standing line and the sleeping line? What are you talking about? So there's a drastic difference, right? Like, we ourselves also have to learn with our kids. So thank you so much, and all the best for your research, and fantastic. Thank you so much. And I would like to invite on stage Maya to come on stage and present a token of our appreciation and a token of a lot of positive, force to you to complete your very, very important research. A huge round of applause.
See the future, gonna get that. 10 toes in, can you feel that, feel that, feel that?